Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday again. So, welcome to Heart and Mind with Dr. Dina McMillan. And I am Dr. Dina McMillan, and we're going to have an amazing show today. Um, really interesting topic. Episode 102, relationship problems. Maybe it's not them. Hmm. Curious already? I hope so. So let's get started. And thank you for being here. And I just want to say I try to keep my promise. No more boring Tuesdays. You're going to get information here you will not find anywhere else, perspectives you don't hear anywhere else, and someone determined to put the power of your relationships, and that includes personal and professional, it back into your hands. It's not about you thinking, oh, isn't she smart? Me being smart means doing my job well so that you understand better what's going on around you and you have the power in your hands to have the kind of relationships that you want and I believe and you should believe you deserve. So we're here every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. And we're going to see, all of us, whether they get rid of daylight savings time because it's still summer, but are they going to keep it on the same time or do we change it back? That's a big question. Now, if you're not able to watch an episode live, that's fine. I upload episodes on my X feed, which is at Dr. Dina 1. You can also find every episode on Rumble, on Daily Clout, and on YouTube. So if you are curious about a topic, you want to see if we covered it, if you want to talk about something else, please go to YouTube, go to Daily Clout, go to Rumble, go to my X feed, and you'll find them all. Now, one of the things I want to ask you, I usually have a couple of people that sign in and make comments and questions. And you can really easily do it on whatever platform you're watching the show on. So please sign in, please ask questions. I want to know what you think. Now, one of the reasons, or I'd say the primary reason, besides the fact that as a military kid and even as an adult, I've lived in a lot of different places, so I've had a lot of varied experiences, but I'm a social psychologist. Now, most people don't know what that is. If this is the first time you're tuning in, you may not know either. Social psychology is not like clinical psychology. We study how the brain works. We study power dynamics. We look at how people learn, how they're influenced and persuaded, manipulated and coerced, indoctrinated, and even brainwashed. And there are so many elements in our environment that are actually designed to do just that. So I want to teach everyone how to spot the strings of manipulation and cut them so that your life is based on your values, your beliefs, and what you want to happen, not someone being clever enough to insert something a certain way so that they can change your beliefs and behaviors. Because that's what social psychology experiments to be able to do. We actually look to see how do we change people's beliefs and behaviors, and especially how do we do it without alerting them that it was an external force that did it. So that's one of the reasons I usually have an evil scientist when I talk about social psychology. Not that I don't think I'm on the side of the angels, but it's too easy for a science like this to be abused and misused, which is often what happens. Social psychologists get you to buy things you don't need. They get you to vote for people that you don't trust. If you gamble at all, they're behind the dynamics in those pokey machines, those slot machines that get you to keep putting money in and sitting there pushing those buttons. That's all social psychology. I want you to be freer than that. I want you to be safer than that. So I hope you keep tuning in. Now, speaking of free and safe, please, please, please get your own copy of the Pfizer papers. This was a huge amount of work by Dr. Naomi Wolf, Amy Kelly, and a whole crew of people who took the studies done by Pfizer about their vaccines and took that information and actually decoded it so the average person can understand what was going on. Now, why did they do that? Because Pfizer went to court to try to hide the results of their studies for 75 years. And the courts, thank goodness, said no. But it still was in research speak and medical speak. And it was, you know, they put it in a way that the average person couldn't just pick up the study and understand what was going on. So these brilliant researchers, these brilliant physicians, these brilliant people who really feel you have a right to know took the time to put this book together. And buying a copy supports the work of this network, which is Daily Cloud. So please, please, please get your own copy. Now, today's topic came about talking to my marketing director. Many of you may know, if you've watched the show, that I 7.5 months ago moved back to the United States from Australia, where I've been living for quite a long time, and opened a new LLC right here in America. I have a new marketing director. Our website has been under construction. It is now up and ready. So if you get a chance, go to themcmillanmethod.com and see what I've been up to, see what we have available, see what's coming. It's exciting. It's exciting. But she and I were having a talk about hair, of all things. And we were talking about how when women go to the hair salon, and she said the same thing happens, she has sons, when they go to the barbershop, everybody is so detailed about everything that's wrong with their current or former partner. But nobody ever looks at the dynamic. Nobody ever talks about, well, wait a minute, what did I do that contributed to that unhealthy dynamic? It's pretty one-sided, it's pretty narrow-minded, and we've had shows talking about the fact that right now it is really popular online to pathologize everything. So somebody you were with wasn't selfish, they were narcissistic, or they were on the spectrum, or just everything, gaslighting you. They didn't forget something and give you the wrong information. They were gaslighting you. I mean, everything is a huge pathology, big fat label. Are we helping ourselves? Also, in addition to not doing that, are we going to have healthier relationships if we never take responsibility for our own role in what happens in our relationships? I am determined to help people across the world have healthier relationships so we have a stronger society, we have stronger families, kids grow up in healthier environments, and it can be done. And we're going to talk about some of what we need to do to make it happen. This is so exciting. What if one capsule a day could help you feel full, reduce cravings, and actually enjoy eating less? Wow. Meet Appetite from the Wellness Company, a groundbreaking formula that helps you take control of your hunger, boost metabolism, and feel fuller longer. It features Akkermansia, a next-gen probiotic shown to boost GLP-1, the hormone that controls appetite and metabolism. It's paired with saffron to curb emotional eating, reduce stress, and support balanced serotonin levels. No stimulants needed. Appetite also includes GLP-1 and GLP-2 activating probiotics, plus prebiotics like inulin and green banana to keep you satisfied and support gut health. It's time your gut controls your thoughts and your mind takes a break with a unique combination of amazingness engineered into one convenient capsule, ready to work naturally with your body. Head to dailycloudhealth.com dailycloud.com and use the code dailycloud to get 10% off plus free shipping. Again, that's dailycloudhealth.com and use the code dailycloud to get 10% off. Take control of your health with the Wellness Company. So, with regard to relationship problems, maybe it's not them. Let's dive into this because I don't want you to get scared. When I say it may not be them, it could be them. But it doesn't necessarily mean if you've made a poor choice, if you've missed something, you haven't seen something, if the relationship didn't work out, here's something radical. There may not be anything seriously wrong with either one of you. It could just be a misfit. But we're going to talk about that because nobody wins if everything is exaggerated. We have to have clear information, accurate information with no hyperbole. I know people get a lot of clicks for saying, going into a long story about how someone gaslit them or how their former partner was a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath. And I admit it is interesting. But we cannot go around seeing monsters in every closet and still be able to make real healthy choices. So I want to help you do that by talking about that today. And Frank Brescia, my most loyal audience member, just signed in and said hair is overrated, that he shaves his head daily. But it's not about the hair. It's about the fact that you're in there for a long period of time. And for anyone who is not Black, understand something. I shocked my colleagues in Australia when I told them how long it takes to get my hair micro braided. Now, my hair is just braided now. It's not micro braided. I want to get it micro braided again. It takes 9 hours. 9 hours. And a lot of the hair treatments that Black women go through, a lot of the hair treatments with color the white women go through, you're there for a long time. So it gives you time to chat. With guys, it's a bit briefer unless they're just going to sit there and hang out and talk. Okay. So, but this is, I noticed it years and years ago that everybody talks about everything the guy did wrong. Nobody ever talks about what they did wrong. I know my life changed after a long-term relationship broke up when I spent some time looking and assessing what I needed to improve. Sure, I could pick up what he did wrong. Oh yeah, that's easy. But what about what I did wrong? Ouch, ouch. But without doing that, I couldn't grow. I couldn't progress. And please stop labeling everybody so fast. If you're not a mental health professional, please stop putting labels on everybody. It's too easy to do. It's not necessarily accurate, and it's certainly not necessarily helpful. Everybody right now is either a narcissist, they're avoidant, they're emotionally unavailable, they're toxic, they're manipulative. Sometimes they are. But one of the things you'll learn from me is how to tell a difference between somebody who really does have these issues and somebody that just did something you didn't like. And so it's easier to label them because then everybody else will, when you tell them about that person, they'll all nod and say, of course it couldn't have worked. It's not your fault it didn't work because this person is, fill in the label. They're toxic in some way. Instead of saying, you know what? I handled this really badly. Well, that's a little harder. You don't get as much sympathy for that. So here are some reasons that your relationship may not work out. It could be that they're just not that into you. They're still attached to someone else. That happens a lot. Incompatibility. Opposites often attract, but they also have a lot of places where they rub each other wrong. Something you're doing is putting them off. They may not tell you, but something you're doing they don't like. Or it could be, here's another thing that I'm also, remember, this is part of me as Dr. Dina McMillan, the McMillan method Any problem I see, I then dive into all the research to see how do I fix this. One of my goals is to really teach people what a healthy relationship looks like, because the majority of people that I meet right now don't know. They don't know how to build and maintain a healthy relationship. And if you get involved with someone and it doesn't work out, it may not be any malice on their part. They just could be clueless. They could come from a very unhealthy family, or all of their relationships thus far have been unhealthy. They don't know what they have to do to make it healthy. You ever thought about that? But again, they could be manipulating you. And while I'm not going to be focusing on those factors on this show, we can do a show based on my unmasking the abuser tactics, because it's the first and still only program in the world that actually shows you the specific tactics used by manipulators, controllers, abusers to lure in and trap their partners. And it's important to know those tactics because they operate according to how the brain processes information. So by trial and error or by looking it up, abusers soon learn how to form a relationship that has the dynamics they want. Because if they don't do things a certain way, your brain won't respond the way they want it to. It's very scary, except I can show you what it looks like. I even have a program. And if you look on my website, www.themcmillanmethod.com, see how easy that is? You'll see something called the first 30 days. I actually can teach people the specifics of what the first 30 days look like. And of course, it's not, you can't, exit off on the calendar. But what I'm talking about is that early stage of a manipulative relationship. I can show you what it looks like so that you can be wary, so that you can teach people you love to be wary, so that if somebody is getting involved and you're seeing the signs, you can give them a heads up, showing them the information. It is really important. And the good news is everything I do, I spend so much time researching how to make things as simple and easy as possible and still have them work. Because I think a lot of things that try to help you are way too complicated. Now, one of the first steps, stop diagnosing people. If you're not a mental health professional with in-depth information about this other individual, stop diagnosing. Just start looking. Guess how much valuable information you can get just from looking, but looking in both directions. Looking at what you did, looking at what the other person did, looking at how they respond to you. You can get all the information you need to know what's wrong. Because we can badly misdiagnose behavior when we start labeling people instead of investigating the evidence. Look for the evidence. It will be there. Look for the patterns, the repeated behaviors. That's going to tell you everything you need to know. What do you think about that? Do you know what your representatives in Washington are actually voting on? With Bill Cam, you can cut through the noise and see what's happening in Congress for yourself. Bill Cam makes it easier to follow legislation, understand the bills being debated, and keep track of the decisions your elected officials are making supposedly on your behalf. Instead of relying on headlines or waiting for someone else to tell you what a bill says, you can dig into the legislation and get the information you need to make up your own mind. Because government works a lot differently when the people are actually watching. Stay informed. Follow the legislation that matters to you. And know what your representatives are doing in Washington. Visit billcam.com and start following Congress today. Now, isn't that a great idea? I'm signing up for that. Can I just make it a little aside? This is episode 102. It's a weekly show. So I've been at this for a little while. I love the sponsors that are selected. They are so picky about the sponsors. sign up for everything they've got because it is so well screened. And right now, I am feeling like you, very frustrated by not knowing what's going on in Washington with people that we went through a lot of effort to elect. So, yeah, well, just get back to it. I just had to make that aside because I'm just so proud of the sponsors that are selected to work with Daily Cloud. Just fantastic. Now, not every disappointing relationship is a dysfunctional relationship. You have to give yourself and other people a break. Not everyone who disappoints you is dysfunctional. Here's a big idea: stop diagnosing, just start distinguishing. Again, you can look and say, this person behaved like this and this was hurtful to me. Not, this person behaved like this, so therefore they must be a fill in the blank with the latest toxic label. It doesn't help you. Sometimes they like you, just not enough to really want the kind of relationship that you want. Sometimes they like you, but not enough. Sometimes they thought they liked you more than they actually did once they started to get to know you. And sometimes they're still attached to someone else. In fact, I want all of you to write to me on the many sources that I mentioned, including through, you can go to info@themcmillanmethod.com and send me a note. I'd like to know, do you need a show? Should we have a show about how to successfully detach from someone when the relationship is over? Because it can take you years if you don't do it right. And sometimes it never happens. Let me know if that's a show topic you'd be interested in. You can reach me on X at Dr. Dina1. You can reach me on info@themcmillanmethod or even Dina@themcmillanmethod.com. Please let me know. I'm happy to do a show about that because I see a lot of people struggling because they can't get over a past relationship. Now, here's another reason things don't work. They're attracted to you, but you're basically incompatible, and perhaps they recognize it more than you do. Something in their life is absolutely overwhelming them. Sometimes people just don't have enough space for the kind of relationship you want. And I don't just mean romance. It can happen even with friendships. Sometimes, and here's a little bad thing, sometimes they like having you around when it's convenient for them because they're using you. You're useful to them. Now, that does not make them a narcissist. It makes their moral code a little dodgy, and we can talk about that. But that's an option as well. But there is also the chance that somebody who's not giving you what you want, whose behavior, especially if their behavior is very erratic, we talked about how intermittent reinforcement builds that trauma bond that's extremely resilient and extremely strong and powerful and hard to break. And manipulators and abusers and coercive controllers do it on purpose because they realize if they're hot and cold and whatever, they realize and recognize, as I said, even if through trial and error, that intensity in a relationship is intriguing to the brain. For most of us, if we could choose between a relationship that's content, moderate, and nice, or a relationship that has severe ups and severe downs and severe ups and severe downs, our brain will choose the intense relationship that's very erratic. Because again, repeat after me, the brain is not always your friend. Now, all of these explanations and more can produce surprisingly similar surface behaviors. People could be having a hard time. They could just not like you enough. They could be manipulating you. And at first, the relationship behaviors can be quite similar. Again, this is why I have a program called The First 30 Days, because I'm going to show you those significant, but they can be easily overlooked differences between somebody who's trying to manipulate you into an abusive relationship and somebody whose life is just a bit chaotic, so they're not as reliable as you'd like. Same behavior, but people can have very different motives. Now, I want you to imagine a scenario. So come with me, people, come with me. They're attentive on Saturday, affectionate on Sunday. Monday, they're quiet. Ooh. Tuesday, barely a text. Oh my goodness. Especially if you're female, you're probably panicking right now, right? But on Wednesday, they're warm again. But on Thursday, they're unavailable. So quick. I want you to do something for me. Tell me what this means. Okay, we're going to pull back the curtain because there are different options for what this could mean. Person A is erratic because they're not particularly interested. They enjoy your company, but not enough to prioritize the relationship. So they contact you if they think about you, but they don't think about you that often. Person B, very interested, but just ended a serious relationship and preoccupied with the ex, wary because perhaps the ex was very hurtful. They don't want to get hurt again. So they're on a bit of an emotional roller coaster. They're a bit emotionally vulnerable right now. Person C is deliberately alternating attention and withdrawal because they know it'll keep you preoccupied and pursuing them. Same apparent behavior, three completely different relationship motives. So we're going to talk about how you can tell the difference, and it's important that you do know the difference. Frank added another one. Sometimes, yes, and this is also one I didn't include, sometimes the person doesn't contact you as often as you'd like because there are other people that they're seeing as well. And in fact, I've known of people who will have the same little nickname for everybody they go out with, so that if they accidentally send a text or a message to one person and they meant to send it to another, the person doesn't know because they use the same nickname for everyone. Yeah, sometimes they're playing the field while they're pretending that they're only interested in you. You have to be really wary of people until you know you can trust them and you know their motives. And I'm not saying everybody has to immediately be monogamous as soon as they go on a date. But if they're not going to be, I believe ethically they should be open about it. Now, let's talk about what you could do. Here's one thing you may do. You may not want to know. So you may not ask the questions. You may not pay attention to the indicators because you just don't want to think about it. So I want you to think about all of this. Don't just ask, what does this behavior mean? Ask, what explanations best predict the rest of this person's behavior? So you have to look at it as a whole. How does that hot and cold, and please know, whatever the motivation, that hot and cold behavior is risky for you to be part of. We've talked about the fact that it builds that rapid bond, not because you're weak, but because the brain is bizarre. And this is something the brain does. You have to ask, what does the rest of this person's behavior predict? Also keep in mind, they may be emotionally available, but just not to you. There's an urban term that I've heard called being a side piece. Sometimes you think somebody is pursuing you as a primary partner for them, and they're pursuing you as a side piece. I think I've mentioned in an earlier show about a really close friend of mine in New York who she had been going out with this guy for a couple of years. And when I met him, I was underwhelmed and suspicious because of some of the things he said, but it wasn't a big enough thing for me to actually say something other than, I think you need to be wary of him, to my friend. And then a while later, she contacted me and said they'd broken up. And I asked why. She said one of his male friends felt sorry for her and revealed to her, while she thought they were in a mutually exclusive relationship, he not only had been dating someone else, he married that other woman while still seeing my friend. Ouch. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah, sometimes people are available, but just not to you. Relationship behavior is relational. Most people do not act the same way with everyone. And in fact, somebody who uses the exact same behaviors and lines with every partner, that's a warning sign. Because a lot of abusers do that. It's like they have a scripted behavior and they follow the same script each time. It's a warning sign. But think back in your own life. How have you behaved with different people? Or have you treated them all the same? Or has something else that's been going on in your life interfered with how you treated other people? Think about it for a second.
No one's yelling, so why is it so painful? Some relationships just seem like water torture. A harsh comment here, a broken promise there. Perhaps all of the effort is being made by you. Or you're just being taken for granted. Few big clashes, just drip, drip, drip. It soon becomes excruciating. You don't need drama to justify getting clarity. You just need evidence. Our clarity tools let you measure what's happening on both sides, privately, in minutes, for personal and professional relationships. After all, a problem you can't see clearly is a problem you can't fix. The McMillan method: see clearly, choose wisely, live better. No one's yelling, so why is it so painful?
So I just thought I'd show you that because we're talking about relationships that are not necessarily based on heavy toxicity, but they don't work out. Um, this whole thing, Frank made a comment that must have hurt. My friend was devastated. And it took her a while to even admit it to me what had happened because she knew that I was wary of him in the first place. And gosh, the thought of somebody being capable of all the intimacy you wanted, but they just don't want to give it to you. Anybody else? Let me raise my hand. I've had that happen. I've had my heart crushed on the floor and ground underfoot. So I'm in a field where it's not like I've always been the one who breaks someone else's heart. I've been crushed and it is so painful. But sometimes you just got rejected. It does not necessarily mean that the person has a personality disorder or they're pathological, psychopathic, sociopathic, narcissistic. Sometimes they just didn't want a close relationship with you no matter how much you wanted it. Matter how much you were willing to compromise. Their answer was just no. And here's a twist. Here's something that's really interesting. And I was not able to find, I found different information for men, but what they found is for women that often having someone who isn't interested in you causes most women to want the guy more. You know, I would say I've seen this same thing. When I advise women, because I also teach women how to be a more attractive partner, how to have, choose a really great guy, have a strong relationship. I actually teach that because we used to learn that from our parents and most people don't. But one of the things I tell them, men don't value what they don't work for. One of the reasons a lot of women run into trouble is they make it too easy for men. And I'm not talking about manipulating and playing hard to get. I'm talking about having self-value where you say, I'm going to be careful and wary until I really know this person, until I know I want to be in a relationship with this person. If they want somebody that's going to fall at their feet in the first date, I'm not that person. Well, it works for men too. Women, a study found that women, if they were thinking about these guys more, if they couldn't predict that or tell that the guy really, really liked them. They're like, oh, I want to think about it. I have to tell you, this is so many of my relatives, OMG. Lots of my relatives, a lot of the women I work with, I may have mentioned when I was living in Brisbane, I got to know a lot of the young women that were had apartments in my building. They would have share apartments. So you'd have to three or four women sharing an apartment. It was a gorgeous building. And I noticed that the few people who actually rented out would rent to women, but they didn't rent to guys because the guys were too likely to be messy and have noisy parties. And for whatever reason, I got to know quite a few of the young women, and they just did not know what they were doing romantically at all. At all. So a lot of them were like this. If a guy played hot and cold, they didn't know if he was only with them, whatever. All they did was obsess about the guy. If the guy was decent and nice and upfront, they were like, oh, yeah, he's okay. Oh, golly, that's bad. See, when somebody's inconsistent, this is why the brain does this. The brain gets homework. It makes you think. You're wondering, how do I fix this? What happened? Was it something I said? Was it something I did? Was it something I didn't do? Why haven't they called? Why haven't they texted? Yesterday was wonderful. Why haven't they gotten back to me? People start obsessing about this. And this is what happens. Suddenly, if you're in that situation and you get caught up like that, you're thinking about somebody for 4 hours. You spend approximately 4 minutes thinking about you. I have to say, it's been a long time since I got caught up in this. A lot of these things, again, this is what I also teach. A lot of the things I don't get caught up in, not because I'm superior, but because I know how the brain works. So when I see the first signs, I pull away because I know that if I get caught up in that dynamic, I'm just as vulnerable as anybody else. So the way to protect myself is to save myself from the trouble and the difficulties. Now, we're going to do something else. I want you to think about this, okay? 7 doors behind cold or erratic behavior. So we're going to talk about 7 overwhelming reasons. In addition, one of these isn't there absolutely, juggling a whole bunch of people. Thank you, Frank. That's a great thing to remind people of. This is not that. Because often people can guess that one. They can think about that one. Yeah, maybe they're seeing other people. These are doors that sometimes people miss and they can't figure out what's gone wrong or going wrong in a relationship. Door number 1 is low interest. They're simply not sufficiently motivated. Now, to be fair, this can change. Sometimes you meet someone, they're just okay, but over time, feelings grow, things become different. But while they're not motivated, while they're not interested, they may not be very available to you. Door number 2, competing attachments. We can put the infidelity here too. Sometimes it's because they're seeing a lot of other people. Sometimes, and strangely enough, I find this happens more often in my experience. This is just my experience. This happens more often with men being still attached to their ex than women. And I think one of the reasons is most women, when they have a painful breakup, will go for a period where they're on their own and they'll work it through. Often when the relationship starts to get dissatisfying, they immediately try to find someone else, and they never get a chance to really mourn and work through the stages with the past relationship. So there's a little flicker of a flame that remains ignited in that past relationship. But whether you're male or female, this could be a reason that somebody who's interacting with you is not as reliable. You feel like there's kind of their guard is up because they're either seeing other people or they're still attached to their ex. Ambivalence. Sometimes people don't know what they want. Those sort of people can waste a lot of your time. Ooh, no. But it is a legitimate reason. Door number 4, something about the relationship isn't working for them. And here's where you also run into a problem, a double whammy. Sometimes it's something about the relationship's not working for them, and they just don't feel comfortable telling you. You can't fix what you don't know is broken. So that can be really tough. Sometimes it's not working because of something and they can't quite put their finger on it. It's like what I said about my younger sister when she lived with me. When I went out with somebody, she's like, I don't like that guy. And I was like, why? I don't know, just something about him. So I started teaching her social psychology because that doesn't help me at all. If there's a reason, try to figure out what it is. And again, not to pitch my clarity tools, but my clarity tools can actually tell you, okay, what's going on here. But sometimes people just, something's not resonating with them. And so they're behaving in a very aloof manner or hot and cold because something's not working. And self-investigation matters. So this is a time when you really need to investigate. If this person is somebody you want a relationship with, this is the time to actually look and see what's going on. And before you try to figure out what's wrong with that person, look to see what's going on between the two of you. Why do people, I'm not saying this. Why am I introducing this? Because I'm looking around and I'm not seeing it. Everything's about something's wrong with that person or change yourself in a weekend. But there's a dynamic going on in a relationship and you need to be able to accurately assess it. What's really happening between the two of you? You can't fix it if you don't know that information, which is how a lot of relationship therapists end up making a lot of money. Because if they keep it, it's either you or that person, or you need to change this, you can change that, but not looking at the dynamic of what's occurring for the two people, the problem persists and they keep having to come back. Door number 5, circumstances really are interfering. Yeah, stuff happens. Sometimes people have very messy lives. And as someone with a messy life can't necessarily, let's say you're dating and you have a small child and you have this big dinner the two of you are supposed to go to, and the child gets sick the night before. That's the kind of thing that happens. Or your babysitter can't come. Or you have to work late. You have a boss that's really demanding in the project. Somebody let you down on the project. So you have to bail out because you have work commitments. It can be a lot of things happening in someone's life that can interfere here. Some explanations really are explanations, not excuses. Okay, so leave some room for that. Because again, what we keep talking about is if somebody is playing you for a fool, somebody's using you or abusing you or trying to take advantage, it's going to show in a pattern of behaviors. It won't be just something happening like them not being able to make an event because something you could never have predicted occurred. That's life happening. Door number 6, they're taking benefits without accepting responsibility. Now, I would say this, that's on you. We cannot be used without our permission. So when I'm teaching women how to draw in really great guys and have a wonderful relationship, one of the things that I teach them is to value themselves more highly than this. Do not allow someone to use you. Often people think, well, if I'm there for them enough, eventually they'll say, oh, she's so helpful to me. And she's so there for me and she provides all of my needs. Let me commit to her. I can count on one hand when I've seen that happen. And that's sometimes because the person has a health event where they think they're not going to live long. If you allow yourself to be used, you are devalued. So if somebody's taking the benefits and not accepting the responsibility, that's bad on them because they're using someone, and that's immoral, I think. But you have to allow it to happen. And it's selfishness. Door number 7 is they really are trying to manipulate you. So they do that hot, cold, big, small, back and forth and over. I hope nobody gets seasick. I should stop moving. I'm not trying to make you seasick. I'm not. But if somebody is behaving like that, sometimes they really are trying to manipulate you, and you need to know that. Critical distinction, unavailable versus manipulative. So a lack of interest primarily indicates a lack of investment in the relationship. Manipulation attempts to influence your behavior. So they go really hot, really cold, really hot, really cold. So there's just, if it's just uniformly blasé and cold, that's just a lack of interest. And you have two choices. You can either accept a relationship on those terms, or you can tell yourself, look, I deserve better, and you can bow out. The uninterested person doesn't call because calling you isn't a priority for them. The manipulative person may call, withdraw, provoke, reassure, threaten, reappear, don't appear, expect you to be always available when they find the time to actually send you a text or want to talk to you. They do this because they know, again, from trial and error, whether they looked it up or not, they're just cunning. And they know if they act like that, it will provoke the kind of responses they want. They'll keep you on tenterhooks, which means the relationship becomes intense, which means your brain says, hey, this relationship is interesting, and it will try to keep you involved. Again, your brain's not necessarily your friend. Someone who isn't interested enough to may waste your time, but someone who's seeking control can take control of your time. They can take control of your life. It really is crucial that you not allow yourself to be manipulated and abused. I really want to help you with that. And yes, I'm going to do a show on that. So don't consider how much attention you're receiving. Pay attention to how much autonomy you have. Because one of the first things that abusers do when they get involved in a relationship is that they will punish the new a romantic target if the person is not immediately available when summoned. So even if they haven't called you for 2 days, if they send you a text, they expect an immediate response. And I have seen so many people who've gotten involved with abusers know that if they don't do exactly what this person wants, that they're going to cancel plans that were really important, or not show up to something they said they would do, or in some other, or yell at them or criticize them or threaten to break up or say this isn't going to work. So they quickly realize they have to always be available. I've seen so many people after 2 weeks dating someone or even less put a special tone for the text and the phone calls from this new person, so that they know no matter what's going on, they have to respond when summoned. Frank reminds, don't let them take control of your finances either. Usually that takes a little bit more time, but yeah, they are always looking to do that too. They look to take complete control of your life, and they always have good excuses for why it's a smart move for you to let them do it. So instead of asking, what is this person? Ask yourself, what's the pattern? Not the extraordinary weekend, not the terrible Tuesday, not the gorgeous apology. What repeatedly happens in this relationship? If you randomly picked a day, what would be going on between the two of you? What happens when I stop supplying the explanations for their bad behavior or believing the excuses they give me? Here's another problem, and this is something especially that women are prone to, and that is if somebody tells them a hard luck story at the beginning of the relationship, which abusers are, and manipulators and predators are very inclined to do, they will thereafter have an excuse for any bad behavior they do. And often they don't even have to provide the excuse. The targeted partner, the romantic partner, will fill in the blanks for them. So they don't call, they don't respond, they promise to do something, promise to show up, they just don't show up. And the person Like, oh, I know they've had a problem with this in the past, so I'm sure that they only did this because of what happened with their ex, or because they're scared, or filling in the blanks for the person. Or if they provide an excuse that's not even a good excuse, believing them because it's more convenient to do so. So you have to, if somebody has a real life event that we just talked about, because life happens, you have to always ask yourself, what evidence do I have that this is actually the explanation, that this is true? Because when you're dealing especially with people who do have narcissistic traits, abusive traits, etc., they are very adept at providing, at lying well. So if they give you an excuse, it will seem legitimate. So you have to always stand back and say, what evidence do I have other than what they've just told me that this is really the case? And even if it is solid evidence, how often has it happened? Always keep looking for patterns, because when someone's what my dad would call a wrongin', there will be a pattern of mistakes, problems, bad behaviors, lack of integrity, random people calling at night, him sneaking out to go talk on the phone. All of these sort of things will be happening if you pay attention. I've noticed that often when people get involved with emotional abusers, because that's what I focus on, not necessarily the physical side. The physical usually comes later. But all of the abusive relationships have emotional, psychological, practical, soon to move to financial, and other ways of controlling and mistreating someone. I've noticed when people get involved with these people, they start getting willful blindness, where you can actually observe some of these behaviors happening right in front of the victim, and the victim won't even notice. They'll have willful blindness. And that starts early too. So pay attention. Anything real bears up under scrutiny. Because if you start believing those backstories, you can stay trapped for years in a relationship that is so inauthentic that anybody that's shown a light on it say, what a relationship. Like my friend who thought she was in an exclusive relationship with a guy, that they were moving towards something serious. And he saw her as just somebody he worked with. So it was convenient to see her, one day during the week as entertainment. But his primary relationship was on the weekends with the woman he eventually married. So what happens if I establish a reasonable boundary? When I teach about getting a really good, healthy relationship, one of the first things I advise people to do is to say no early in the relationship. It doesn't have to be mean, doesn't have to be a big thing. But one thing that happens with hyper-controlling people like abusers and manipulators and predators is that they don't want to take no for an answer. They don't accept reasonable boundaries. Now, if you're with somebody and perhaps they see you as a little bit of entertainment, but they're not really invested, they're not really that interested, even if they're not a manipulator or an abuser or whatever, a reasonable boundary may be sufficient for them to actually break it off. It's like, I don't care enough to deal with this. So no, I'm not going to see that person anymore. And that can be hurtful, but better find out now, right? But a controlling person will punish, criticize, argue. One of the things you'll notice with an abuser who have those hyper control issues is that they won't let it go. Same thing happens. Just think of it like when you go to look at a new car and they're trying to convince you that you'll get the best deal if you sign it and buy the car before you walk off the lot. And you're like, no, I never make decisions this fast. And they keep sweetening the deal, and they just won't let it go. They won't let you just say, okay, come back next week when you think about it for a minute. That's the same way people act in relationships when they're trying to use you, control you, own you. Even if it's like different flavors of ice cream or which is your favorite restaurant, They will not let it go. And if you say, well, I don't usually go out on weekdays or whatever the reasonable boundary is, they won't just say, okay, I can understand that. They're going to just pick, and won't let it go. So that's something you also need to know. And here's something else. It is not a crime not to love you. Most of us have loved somebody who didn't love us back or didn't love us enough back. It's excruciating. However, it is life. Just because somebody didn't feel what you wanted them to feel does not mean they are a filled in the blank pathological human being. People are allowed to reject us. They're allowed to not want to be with us. They're allowed to make romantic decisions we think are stupid because you're like, you'll never be happy with that person, not like you were with me. And of course, it may be true. But however, there's nothing we can do about it. Isn't that mean? Rejection can hurt terribly without anybody having committed an offense. So when we had the circles of intimacy, some of the materials with which I used for the clarity tool assessments, because it's back and forth, what do you do and how do you prioritize that person? So it looks at your interaction with them, and then based on their behavior, their interaction with you, and you get a much clearer idea of what's really going on in that relationship. Even when you look at that, sometimes it's just that there's nothing you can do. When you get the score guide and it talks about more in depth of what your answer means, and when I talked about it on the show, I mentioned you cannot make someone care for you more than they do. I had a family member where I ended up in the acquaintance circle, and she never changed that. There's nothing I could do about it. So I just had to accept it, even though it's always been painful. So people are allowed not to want a relationship with you. What they're not entitled to do is deceive, exploit, intimidate, coerce, or deliberately manipulate you. They do not have a right to do that. That is wrong. That is bad. And depending on what they're doing, it may even be illegal. They don't have a right to do that. Now, I want you to think about something. Have you ever been the person with someone where they cared about you more than you cared about them? How did you behave with them? And do you think it makes you pathological? You probably don't, because we usually interpret our own behaviors as reasonable or understandable, or maybe it was a wrong choice, but I'm not really a bad person. We always have rationalizations for what we do. But lately, especially, people will pathologize anything that happens to them. Again, you'll be taking a huge step, and please show this to other people. You're taking a huge step in emotional and relational health, just understanding that it is not necessarily a pathology that causes a relationship to break up. Sometimes people just don't fit together. Sometimes somebody wants something different than what you're offering. Sometimes you want something different than what they're offering, and you have a right to do that too. So I want you to stop asking the questions that can't save you, like, are they a narcissist, or are they a gaslighting me, or that shouldn't be your first question. I want you to stop labeling and instead ask, okay, what's going on here? Where do I see a pattern? What do I see a repeated behavior? How do they interact with me on a regular basis? Is it stable, erratic? Is it really extreme? Start asking those kind of questions for yourself. Look for patterns. Consider alternative explanations. It may not just be the worst explanation you can come up with. It may be stuff happens. That may be the reason something occurred. And of course, I will be fair here. Sometimes they are a narcissist, but sometimes they're just frightened. Whether because they care about you a lot, they think you don't care about them, they've been hurt in the past, they're still, having issues with the ex, they grew up in a household where they didn't have healthy relationships. Sometimes they're confused. So again, sometimes they're still in love with their ex. Maybe you're doing something that's putting them off. Maybe they're manipulating you as the last response on this. Or maybe they're just not that into. Frank adds, maybe they're just evil. Yeah, well, yeah, that can be it. But if they're evil, evil shows too. So if you get used to paying attention to repeated behaviors, patterns of behaviors, things where the explanation doesn't have any evidence behind it, you're going to notice what's going on and you'll have all the information you need to make really solid relationship decisions without going to graduate school and becoming a psychological professional. Sometimes relationships don't work because the person's just not that into you. You don't need the perfect psychological or emotional diagnosis to make a good decision. You just need good evidence. What's going on between us? Not just what are they doing? What's happening between us? Look at that dynamic. What's going on between us? That needs to be what you're looking at. Okay? So I wanted to show you something because, as I said, this is important and new.
For 100 episodes of Heart and Mind, we've explored how people think, how we're influenced, how manipulation works, how we miss things, and how understanding human behavior can help us navigate life more effectively. But for a long time, I've been building something beyond the show, the McMillan Method. It's where I turn cognitive and behavioral science into practical tools you can actually use to understand your relationships, recognize manipulation, identify hidden patterns, evaluate risk, navigate workplace behaviors, build and maintain healthy relationships, and make better informed decisions. We're doing it through clarity tools, books, classes, professional training, healthy relationship education, protective programs, and more. Take a look at the clarity tools. The Unmasking the Abuser program, Healing the Rift anti-bias training, books, printed, audio version, and ebooks. The Unmasking the Abuser podcast series. And the list of products and services is growing quickly. Different resources, one purpose, helping you see what you couldn't see before. Now you can see what others miss. The McMillan Method. See clearly, choose wisely, live better.
So I'm very excited about my new tools. It's a whole system that I spoke to someone today about licensing my Unmasking the Abuser program, because the approach is so different and it actually produces measurable improvements and protections, unlike most programs. But my whole system of doing things, allowing people tools to help you see where you are now, what's the dynamic, where am I standing now, understand what's going on, and then guidance and support to get where you want to be. That's what we do. And everything's quick, easy, and please note, relatively inexpensive. I've noticed since I got back to the States that everything I'm seeing, they want to put their hands in your wallet. Oh my goodness. And I'm like, okay, like the clarity tools can be reused. I've not seen anybody offer an assessment tool that can be reused. Mine can. You buy it once, you can use it as many times as you need. I want you to get the information you need to have healthy relationships, and I don't want to pick your pocket. So thank you, everyone, for joining me today here on Heart and Mind. I'm Dr. Dina McMillan. Hopefully I will see you next Tuesday. And once again, I promise, no more boring Tuesdays. So, and thank you, Frank, for saying it's an excellent episode. I will see you all next week.